much better. Last week at the Peace Celebration, Reverend Carolyn was talking about water. And we are so blessed where we live up near between Alamogordo and Cloudcroft, and we have beautiful fresh mountain water, so I take it with me wherever I go. Well, thank you, first of all, for being here. I was asked to talk about sound and healing, and it's something that's very, very precious to my heart. I'm going to take us back just for a second and think about when we're growing up and coming up through that stream of years and experience and getting to the place where we are now. And a lot of us got here with pretty shielded hearts, nice coats of armor that we used to kind of maneuver around this planet with. So what causes us to shield our hearts and protect our inner world in this way? I tend to think that it does, usually come as we grow up and various things happen that cause us to feel small or scared. And we might look back as adults and go, well, those weren't really big deals, but as a child they are. So we don't get to look back and go, it was inconsequential. When I was growing up, in our home, intellect, not heart, was king. And with an undiagnosed processing disorder, my need to project outward and to vocalize the overwhelming number of ideas that were coming in through my mind was often met with, oh, be quiet, you do go on. Well, for those of you who know me, nothing's changed. But what it did do was it set a course for communication difficulties, for ongoing physical challenges with my neck and my throat area, and for finding more and more ways to try and feel heard. Now, some of those ways were fruitful. I became a musician. I became a speaker. I managed to find ways to utilize sound that were productive. Some of those ways were less productive. For example, I don't know if you all know this, but did you know that complaining is a terrible way to feel heard? Who knew? Sound healing was a very, very natural fit for me. And the events leading up to me finding this path were proof that Spirit was not only guiding me, but really making sure that I was listening. Are you paying attention yet? Years ago, about 20 years ago, in fact, I was visiting a friend one day, and she said, well, what are you interested in? Because I was kind of job hunting. And I said, you know what? I'm really interested in the use of sound and music and healing. I just know that it's incredibly powerful, but I don't know anyone who's teaching it. And it was one of those moments where I was kind of watching the words come out of my mouth like a really long Chinese fortune cookie message. I'm going, wow, I didn't even know I thought that. The long and the short of it is, in the space of 5 days, I found a workshop being led by one of the world's most renowned sound healing experts. And the workshop started in 2 days, 1,000 miles and 2 ferry rides away. I didn't have any money. I got there. I managed to get them to pay for everything. Which is kind of cool gig all by itself. Signed up for the instructor's full training. That was Pat Moffat-Cook on Bainbridge Island. Absolutely fantastic educator in this field. And got home to discover that I'm driving home going, how the heck am I going to pay for that? I had just signed up for thousands of dollars worth of training and airfare and hotels and whatever. I got home to discover that the whole time I was away, somebody had been desperately trying to reach me. They wanted to buy my house for $30,000 over what it had been appraised at less than 6 months earlier. I sold the house, found the perfect house, had enough money left over to pay for everything. So at the end of that series of miracles, I was left feeling, I'm really supposed to be doing this. and it changed my life. I learned that I wasn't just a freak. I'm supposed to say I wasn't a freak, but anyway. I had some real conditions that I had to work around, but I learned that there were ways to do that. And I learned that sound healing wasn't a Band-Aid. It was a means by which we can talk to our bodies in a primary language, a vibrational language. That is our primary language. We are vibrational beings. And I learned that balance and harmony didn't need to feel like some sort of foreign entity in my body. What is that? Get out. So sound healing is a huge topic, and all I can barely do today is just give you a little taste of a few different things. And before I forget, Reverend Tanya said that there might be some people who would be interested in maybe doing a fuller workshop where we can cover more ground. If anybody is interested in something like that, let her or me know, and we'll put something together for you. So sound, music, and vibrational practices date back about as far as we're able to track. And in the oral tradition, shaman, Jankri Nele, sound healers all over the globe practiced and taught their lineage. And part of the challenge is that, as global communication became prevalent and young people all over the globe, they didn't want to learn about sound healing from the local shaman. They wanted to move to America and drink Coca-Cola and wear blue jeans. So a lot of that oral tradition has just been lost to nature over the years and over the centuries. But a lot of these practices have outlived many scientific but for example, I am happy to report that we no longer medically do bloodletting and use leeches. But there are some very efficacious sound healing practices that you can do instead. It's really awesome. I think that one of the greatest challenges for all of us who have chosen to be awake is that the more we improve our technique for maneuvering around this planet, the further we feel from a lot of the people on it. And, maybe that's just me, but I don't think so. This runs contrary, of course, to what we're trying to do. We're trying to foster this sense of oneness. But, there are a lot of people who aren't really having this conversation or thinking about it. So as we move around in our daily lives, we tend to seek collections or pockets of people, or attract those pockets of people who are like-minded. So that's awesome, and thank you for being here. This sense of oneness that we seek is it's the thing that confirms our true nature. That's the link between that and sound is, Barry will tell you all about this. What happens when you play the piano? You just go there, don't you? Yeah. Sound used in an intentional way is the most direct tool that I know of for helping us connect our inner and our outer world. To be in harmony with our spiritual nature requires finding balance in the physical world and to find ways to live as pure being while in form. How many of you have done any chant or mantra work, anything like that? So you have some of the sense of what happens to you physically, and then physiologically, and then emotionally as you create this vibrational pattern. The interesting thing about mantra, I'm going totally off book here. The interesting thing about mantra is that what we are really doing is tuning our vessel to attract a like frequency that already exists in the cosmos. So if, for example, we know that light, healing, and the pure divine essence is the true nature of our existence, is the true nature of the universe and the world, then we have this dense physical form, and we can say, Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsavator Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dhyo Yona Prachodayat. And if we keep doing that over and over, eventually we will literally tune our physical vessel to be in alignment with that consciousness that already exists. That's what mantra work is for. I think it's interesting that almost every culture has a creation myth that comes from sound. Hindu, Buddhist, and Jewish mystics believe that the word creates and pervades everything that exists. In the Bible, John wrote, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." But interestingly enough, in the Hindu Vedas, we read, "In the beginning was Brahman, with whom was the Word, and the Word is Brahman." We will find these consistencies and similarities all around the globe and all across time. Mystics believe the world is a reflection of infinite combinations of sound patterns. They say all things from the biggest star to the smallest flower, and even you and I, are coagulations of sound waves. Well, a coagulation doesn't sound very pretty, but I like that sound wave bit. Sound is the primordial language. It speaks to the most fundamental aspects of our physiology. It activates the limbic system, what we call the primitive brain. And the limbic system is directly involved in memory and processing emotions. So when we're playing music, what we're doing is communicating with that limbic system and then having a really direct conversation with our entire feeling body. When we make sound, specifically toning or chanting, certain brain chemicals, actually called neuropeptides, act as couriers between the mind and the body and spread this message of well-being. So if, for example, you were to do a humming practice, which I'm going to actually do with you today, in literally 60 seconds, you can send a message of well-being to your body that will take you out of fight or flight and return you to homeostasis, reduce blood pressure, and just say, it's okay, you don't have to run from the bear, everything's all right. We're good now. So we're going to do that together in a minute. Our hearing mechanism is also connected to this limbic system by virtue of the 10th cranial nerve. We probably didn't know you were going to a nursing or physiology class today. Anatomy 101 and sound. The vagus nerve carries information, as I was just talking about, to the blood pressure, to, I've got a whole bunch of stuff here, digestion, lungs, your voice box, everything. So that whole system is either on full alert, which we are, fight or flight, which we all are a lot of the time, or else we're finding ways to bring ourselves back to homeostasis, back to balance, a feeling of harmony. And sound is just an incredibly efficacious way of doing that. So think about it. Everything in and around us is vibrating and making sound in this marvelous harmonic dance, even though we can't hear it. Think about this. When you say something, the ear very quickly loses its ability to hear the overtones of it, but the vibration of it continues on out there for a long, long time. So how powerful is that? How powerful is the word then? Pythagoras. Y'all know Pythagoras, my buddy. He said each celestial body, in fact, each and every atom, produces a particular sound on account of its movement, rhythm, or vibration. And all these sounds and vibrations form a universal harmony in which each element, while having its own function and character, contributes as a whole. We are in a continuous sound bath. And in the city, when you live in the city, a lot of that sound bath is man-made. And what happens just kind of below our register of awareness is it's affecting us all the time. And you end up with huge bodies of people who are living permanently in fight or flight. Now, there's a lot of intuitive response to that. You come home, you're tired, you put on some music that soothes you. You know, we often use sound and music to self-regulate without even being 100% aware that we're doing that. And teenagers are very good at this, by the way. All that metal stuff you don't like listening to is actually good for them. Not too loud, hurts the ears. So a really effective tool for this is this humming practice. How many of you know Brenda DeHaven? Okay. She said I could share this with you. She and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and she was having a terrible time with tachycardia, and her heart was just racing like mad, and she was having trouble breathing. And of course, physiologically, those are things that happen when you're, you know, in high anxiety. So you get into this kind of feedback loop, and she wasn't sleeping, and she was really having a very, very uncomfortable time. So I taught her this humming practice, and God bless her, you know, I've taught this to dozens and dozens of people, and most people don't really do it. Or if they do, it's like maybe for a minute, a couple of times, and they didn't like it much, so they stopped. She did it for 10 minutes every day for a week, came to me a week later, grabbed my hand and said, "Thank you." It had just stopped. It had completely stopped the condition she was experiencing that was causing her so much distress. So talk to Brenda DeHaven. Here it is. You're all, I totally want to get away from this microphone. The best way to do this is just sitting up straight in a straight back chair, and you all are in the perfect place. You want your feet on the floor. You want to do this practice in the morning because it will actually make you alert, like peacefully alert. But if you do it at night, you'll be peacefully alert at 3 o'clock in the morning, cursing my good name. Morning practice. And if you can work yourself up to 5 minutes a day, you'll change your life with it. You're going to put the tip of your tongue on the alveolar ridge, which is that ridge right behind your top teeth. Like that. Lips together, because that's a humming practice. And this is what most people do, because it's, you know, now focus on lips and tongues and everything. Just rest the tip of your tongue there, close your mouth, and put your lips very slightly forward as if you're going to kiss a sleeping baby and you don't want to wake them up. And then take a deep breath, and you're going to exhale that entire breath in a nice, long, even hum, somewhere in the middle of your vocal range, just a comfortable note. And when you've used up your air, breathe in and do it all again. So let's all do it together for a minute. And don't be afraid to make a sound no one can hear you over their hum. You can see that in a very, very short length of time, you just it just starts to feel like inside your body was an elevator you didn't know about, and it was on the top floor, and it's just settled much closer to one of the lower floors. I just started teaching at an elementary school, and there was a little boy who's quite hyper, and he couldn't even sit in his seat for longer than 3 seconds at a stretch. And I taught him this. I sat with him and I said, you know, I have a busy mind too. So we did this together, and he literally sat in that chair for the rest of the class and pretty much completed his assignment in a couple of minutes of just humming with me. And the next class that I saw him, he was sitting there going, and I wrote it out for him so he said he wanted to teach it to his family. I thought that was so cool. The Sanskrit language. We all speak it. It's possibly the oldest language still in use today, and most mantras are in Sanskrit, which seems awkward and difficult to a lot of people. I used to lead chanting groups, and a lot of people just felt really Om Triambakam Yaja Yaja Yiha Ya. They just it didn't feel comfortable to roll off their tongues, and I started thinking about, well, the mantras are formed around all the seed syllables, lam, vam, ram, yam, tham, haum, aum, om, all kinds of seed syllables are scattered throughout that language. And those sounds occur in our language. I, om, o, ah, God, ah, Jehovah, Yahweh. I mean, that ah shows up all, and that's very heart-centered. Ah, ah. It's a great sound. Ah. I thought how interesting it would be if we could just, this doesn't want to stay here, really doesn't. Let's try that. If we could find things in English that feel comfortable, that make sense to us. I mean, chanting is great, doing mantra work is great. I'm a big fan of it. But if it feels funny to say those funny words, then find something that doesn't feel funny. So a great one that I found is, I'm home, I've arrived. It has a whole bunch of the seed syllables in it. It carries some of the same meaning, if we need to give meaning to the brain. And it's a very comforting chant or mantra. So whenever you're feeling like just scattered or way out there, just, I'm home, I've arrived. I'm home, I've arrived. I'm home, I've arrived. I'm home, I want to nap now, I've arrived. Brings me down very, very quickly, down in a good way. There's some very simple chants. I'd just like to share a couple with you. I don't want us to go on forever, we are going to do a singing bowl meditation, but just to run a couple past you for familiarity. There's a beautiful one, Shri Krishna Saranam Mama. Shri Krishna Saranam Mama. And it's just, I find that so beautiful and pretty. It's actually masculine, feminine, it's a chant to invoke the masculine, but it's also to take shelter in the love of Krishna. It's just a beautiful balance of masculine, feminine energy, one that's less pretty, but it's also very much about balancing. That masculine and feminine energy is the damo da hum hum. Some of them are very driving, damo da hum hum, and they will carry us from one place to another. One you'll all like, ahem prema. Ahem prema. Ahem prema. It means I am divine love. Ahem prema. Some of these are like little pocket medicines. You can just carry them around in your spiritual pocket or your bag of goodies and use them when you need them. When I'm driving or somebody gets my goat, I'm like, oh, okay, I've got something for that. Here's my anti-goat getting chant, ahem prema. There's so many. And mantras in Sanskrit have a specific purpose, and as I said, they contain all of these seed syllables, and we can use those seed syllables just on their own. There's all kinds of things like ah, which is for chest and heart, or oh, which comes up a little bit higher, ooh, ooh, neck, face, third eye, ooh, ooh, will actually start bringing your attention or your physical sensation up to the third eye. A, jaws, ears, and eyes. So I figure Canadians must be really healthy. A. Really good one if you have a headache. E. E stimulates the brain. It fires nerves, but it also meets a headache, and that's a really important sound healing principle called the ISO principle, when you meet something where it's at. So if you've got headache pain, match it. E, and it'll feel uncomfortable at first, but it will also throw that headache off balance. Wait, I thought I was the king here, but I'm not. Look, there's an E. Uh-oh. E. Oh. Tons, too many to actually go through. But what I want to think about before I move into meditation is, in our daily lives, are we really conscious of the sounds that we are making? The sounds that we put out into the world? And as I said before, remember that just because you can't hear something anymore doesn't mean that it's not still carrying. So we have to start thinking about the sounds we make often and the tone of our voice. You know that old joke about the couple who've been married 60 years, and the woman says at the breakfast table, "Pass the salt, honey." And he jumps up and he says, "You old cow, I'm sick of this. I can't stand it any longer." Because that's not what he heard, because that wasn't what was encoded in her voice. And she's like, "I just said pass the salt," you know. We're not aware of what's encoded in our voice much of the time, and we're putting out in our sound everything. Our sound is coming up through these vessels called the body, and the body is holding onto all that cellular memory. And the guy that ticked you off last week, and this, that, you know, our guilts and our fears and our shame and all the things that we carry with us, those things become encoded in our sound unless we learn to pay attention and think about where that sound is coming from. So imagine for a moment, you do not create sound here. Sound exists. Sound is the nature of being. The world is sound. So what we're doing is reflecting it. We have a larynx, a voice box that's very, very efficient at doing that. So just imagine that the sound of the universe is all there, and it's coming to you, and you're choosing what part of that sound you wish to utilize, whether it's to say I love you or I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you again not to park on my foot. Whatever the thing is you need to say, you can find a way to do it that does not utilize all those feeling tones in the body, but rather pulls from that vast repertoire of beautiful sound that exists in the cosmos, and then just bounce it off of your larynx. You're just borrowing it, using it for a second, and sending it back out there in the same condition you found it. Just think of your sound in that way and see what happens as you speak and share and communicate for a little while. Think about the words that you use. The one H-A-T-E, which I actually really have trouble saying anymore. Once a mystic said, how can you use that word and not know that you are in part responsible the next time somebody gets stabbed in Central Park? Because you are putting that vibration back out in the world, and you're contributing to a pool that people are drawing from. Love, love, ah. The awe of God. Feel that energy in your chest. So sound healing is not restricted to ancient practices. There are many modern authorities on this subject. Lots of you have heard of Kay Gardner, Jonathan Goldman, Don Campbell, Mozart Effect. You know, there's so many people working in this field. It's huge, and there's a ton of information about it. There's many techniques and practices that are so incredible. I keen to the chants and the mantras and the sound, but there are a lot of things that don't require making sound, but rather just knowing more about it. Music practices that are very efficacious. I'd be happy to answer any questions at another time about that. Lots of people use sound to self-regulate. I know that I do. 6th century philosopher Boethius put it this way. He said, "Music is so naturally united with us that we cannot be free from it, even if we so desired." Nada Brahma. The world is sound. So now I'd like to ask you to join me for a little meditation. I've stolen my own order of service. Some people love the crystal bowls because there's such a pure sound. Other people love the Tibetan bowls because of the dissonance. It's very diagnostic. So I invite you to get comfortable. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. If the sound doesn't carry well to the back, then please come forward. That's not a singing bowl. If you're not living in the light, you can't be here, better get a move on. And if you're looking for the light, you gotta find it on your own. You can't take mine, it isn't mine, because we're all sharing with the one. If you're looking for the answer, maybe look toward the sun. Yeah, open up your mind to the concept of the one. You gotta open up your mind and let it fill you till you're done, and then you open up your heart and let the love flow in, and you get up in the morning and you do it all again. You let the love flow in and in and in until you find you're walking with a smile, and it's easy to be kind. And you guys are gonna help out here, 'cause you're a light man. I'm your biggest fan. You're a light man. That's it. I'm your biggest fan. You're a light man. I'm your biggest fan. You're a light man. You don't know that you are free when you're caught up in your frailty. You don't know you are free if you haven't learned to see how your heart is pounding. Now it's beating like a drum. You cannot see me, but you feel me, 'cause you know that I'm the one. You know my heart's receiving, even when you're not believing. I'm the law, I'm the sound, I'm the sky, I'm the ground, the receptacle, the spectacle, and though you might seem skeptical, you know your heart and mind are full of love, and all things possible. 'Cause far away or proximal, effect is always causable. Get it? Far away or proximal, effect is always causable. 'Cause you're a light man, I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. Sing it to each other. Light man, I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. Once more with feeling. Light man, I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. Yeah, I'm your biggest fan, you're a light man. I'm your biggest fan, light man. Light man. Thank you, everybody. Want your microphone back?
Got it. Are you buzzing?